Before we get started, this channel is for educational purposes only, or perhaps entertainment purposes only, depending on what the law prefers. So we'll just throw both out there. All right, so hope you all had a good weekend so far. I know it's almost over, but going to be going over the near-death experience of Ryan Rampton. Really interesting case. He ended up getting electrocuted, which is, talk about rough. Basically, he had to do a repair in his house, and even had a beforehand had like a dark, I guess, premonition or realization that something could go wrong. And well, of course, that's what happened next. Is he ended up getting electrocuted. You hear definitely a difficult and taxing life script when he speaks. Went through multiple divorces. Had from what he said, a successful company as well. And from what I gather, it got stolen from him by a partner, or he was in some lawsuits with them, and I guess it was valued, it was over $1 million or something like that. So that's not easy. And also, you also hear him say how he was asking for God's help, and that's kind of like the narrative throughout a lot of these, right? It's always this asking for help. Always deciding to interact with the illusions of the Matrix. And they can come in many forms. They could come in the form of Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, God, source, creator, deceased loved ones, deceased pets, and on and on and on. We've seen it 1,000 times. And the big takeaway with investigating the soul trap is that it's all about taking the sovereign mindset, right? Not allowing yourself to be interfered by anyone or anything, and seeing what the hell happens, right? So instead of blindly believing that who you are dealing with is in fact who they claim, you go your own way, do your own thing, and don't let anyone or anything try to convince you otherwise and suck you back into this illusion. And a few quotes that I put in the description, some of you may have already seen them. Quote, anything that could have happened to me in this life was completely healed in that moment. And we're gonna hear that early on, and that's a big one, and we'll get into that when we get there. Another quote, I felt so perfect and so in love. It was the most amazing, completed feeling. And then the last quote is, there was absolutely no judgment. Everything was beautiful. Perfect lesson for me to learn from. Really, really, there's a lot of rapid fire realizations that we're going to go over during this one. So thanks for hanging there. Hey, Mao, good to see you, my friend. And break the spell. All right, so let's get rolling. Oh, I'm sorry. One last thing. Some of you may have already seen it, but I am playing after the stream today a very interesting game. I haven't played it yet, but just the just the description of it's interesting. I'll just very, very quickly. It's called The Wild Eternal, and it's can you escape the cycle of reincarnation? So what I'll do is drop the link in for you now. And if you'd like to set a reminder, feel free. But about 5-10 minutes after the stream concludes, we'll be over on the Truth in Gaming channel. So here's the link for anyone interested. And there's also a trailer in there, as well as a description, a more detailed description of the game. So, okay. Hello, Victor. Welcome on Odyssey. All right, let's go. Sorry about the delay there. No more delays.
So amazing. And then God like showed me my whole life.
Oops.
Like it just flashed in front of me.
Apologies. Hold on one moment here.
Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Ryan Rampton, and he's going to tell us about his near-death experience, but you've got a lot of experiences to share as well. So I'm going to let you start wherever you like and take as long as you like.
Oh, right on. So again, my name is Ryan Rampton. I'm a firefighter paramedic. I've done a lot of things over the years, and I'm also a commercial photographer, professional photographer. So I took a break for about 10 years, actually about 18 years, when between the fire department and just did photography full time. Well, during that time, I had a photography studio, and had been photographing a family earlier in the day, and one of the kids was acting really wild and ended up knocking over one of my lights. And so it's a big professional studio light, and has a flash tube in it and all this, and it broke the light. And I thought, don't worry about it, and later in that day, I decided I would take care of it. Well, my kids have been watching a movie in our projector room. So we had a big video projector, and they were watching on the big screen a movie, and we were watching it, together. And I got almost to the end, and I'd seen the show, a dozen times with them. And I started thinking about this light, that I was going to go out and try to fix it. So I got up and I went out to the studio part and got the light and started messing with it. And it was all broken. So I'm taking.
Now, how funny is that, right? He got into the light, and then you're going to see how he
broken
how he talks about how he was involved with the light.
Plastic pieces off, and the plug was like a computer plug that has the black cord that plugs into the three metal prongs in the back, like a computer. And so that whole piece had broken off. So I had all that out here with wires hanging off of it. And I started pulling on the wires and trying to take it apart. And I had this feeling of impending doom, like, oh, I'm going to get electrocuted.
So he has the feeling of impending doom, basically a premonition, a light premonition, or a big premonition, I guess you can say, that something nasty is going to happen. That's his intuition. And, well, unfortunately, you'll see what happens.
And I thought, well, I better go unplug this. So I went over and I had like a double wall socket where 4 lights were plugged in. And I went over and unplugged it. Well, unbeknownst to me, I unplugged the wrong one. So I went back and I'm starting to play with it, and I'm trying to get a grip on it to pull this plastic piece off. So I've got these 3 metal prongs sticking up. They're plugged into the cord, and I've got this plastic piece that's kind of broken, and I can't get a good grip on it. So I'm a pretty smart guy. I like to MacGyver things, figure things out. So decided in my brilliance to use my teeth as pliers. So I bit down on it to get a good grip and pull on that. And those 3 metal prongs touch my tongue, and 110 volts goes straight into my brain. And I could not move a muscle. Like, completely locked me up. And it really surprised me at first. I didn't realize it was going to do that. I've been electrocuted before, but I didn't know that I would be locked up where I couldn't move a muscle, that my muscles were just frozen. So I'm a pretty strong guy, and I'm pulling with all my strength, trying to pull this cord out, and I can't budge it. I can't move. Then I tried to move my eyes to see if, my kids had seen what was going on, and they were going to come and unplug the cord from the wall, and I couldn't move my eyes. Nothing was moving, including my heart. So my heart's frozen too. Everything in my body is completely frozen, and the muscles are all locked up. And I'm like, okay, well, I've been in worse situations than this. How many times have I tried to die and God saved my life, And so that's what's going to happen. I'm pretty sure, and I've been in lots worse situations.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine getting electrocuted on your freaking tongue? Oh, just the thought of it. Just the thought of it. Oh.
So I'm kind of waiting for something to happen, like a circuit breaker to pop or the kids to come in, something to happen. And nothing's happening except I'm frying. I don't know if you've ever been electrocuted, and it's that little bite. Well, this was like every cell in my body was just on fire, and it was so painful. And I just kept thinking, okay, well, something's going to happen. And then I could see black smoke billowing out of my mouth, like almost like an old locomotive, just puffing out of my mouth. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is not good. I know your body's not supposed to do this. This is definitely, and I thought to myself, I'm dead. Like, I'm going to die. And I went, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Like, I'm going to die from stupidity for putting an electrical cord in my mouth. Like, I'm going to get a dang Darwin Award. I'm going to be a joke on the internet about this idiot that bit on an electrical cord and died. And I thought, no, that's not fair. Like, I couldn't die when I almost got in a plane crash, flying my airplane, got inverted in the clouds. No, I can't die that way, in a blaze of glory. I can't die when I was scuba diving and I ran out of air offshore.
You hearing this? I mean, Christ, man, how many dust ups has this guy almost had? Jesus.
Plane got inverted in the clouds. No, I can't die that way, in a blaze of glory. I can't die when I was scuba diving and I ran out of air offshore and almost drowned. No, can't die doing something I love. Can't die in a car crash, a motorcycle accident, like all these times I should have died. No. And and I can't die like when I was a firefighter and I got caught in this flashover and saved this little boy's life. Can't die a hero. How am I going to die? I'm going to die from stupidity. Well, this is just great. And I'm just all mad about that. And then I could see this really bright light up above my head. And I remember like looking up into the light. But if you remember, I couldn't move anything. So it wasn't really me looking up. I was still doing this. But I looked up into the light and I just remember seeing this light come down from the ceiling, and it was the most beautiful light I'd ever seen. It was just so inviting and enthralling.
It was so inviting. So inviting. Invitation declined.
Come down from the ceiling, and it was the most beautiful light I'd ever seen. It was just so inviting and enthralling. And I remember.
So the reason I'm stopping again is like this is why the system works so well. It is the last thing many see and interact with. It's inviting, it's loving. There's usually deceased family members involved with this, or, again, roll out the deities, God, source, creator, whatever, and it's all the same stuff. But think about it. You just came from a very dense, very limited perspective as a human, and then you're rolling over into your spirited essence self, and the first thing the Matrix throws at you is this inviting, warm, seductive white light that is going to pull you in. It's going to be one of the first things, well, not us, but a lot of individuals see, which it clearly shows how easy it is to end up back here because you're going through with it. You're deciding to go hurling down the tunnel to the white light and interact with this thing. But it's to no fault of anyone. It's just the way it is. It's so it's such a perfect setup. It really is. When you think about how they have laid all this stuff out, it's impressive. I hate to give them credit, but credit where credit's due, unfortunately.
So inviting and enthralling. And I remember going up through my body and going into the light. And I had the feeling of movement or motion or traveling.
Which is the tunnel.
Through the light. And then I ended up in this pure white room. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm dead. like, wow, I'm dead. And there was no disappointment, no sadness. Like, I was so excited that I was going home to God. And I like was so just like a little kid at Christmas.
Now, one common thing you'll see with NDEers when they say, "Oh, I'm going home to God," or "I was in the presence of God," you see the tears in his eye, in their eye. I mean, this is another example. All you gotta do is look at them. It's like they have a firm flashback to that moment, and it is incredibly powerful. And think about it. Um, there's a number of comments out there that say, "Oh, I don't know how you can keep falling for this, or how experiencers can't see this and stuff like that." Well, it's easy. Imagine, just put yourself in this guy's shoes, right? And say to yourself, "Well, what if I experienced this? What if I had this amazing, loving, incredible experience? How would I respond?" Well, when you come back and it's the first thing you want to probably talk about, or at least is going through your head constantly. And the second thing is when you die, or at least throughout the rest of your life leading up to death, that's where you're going. And it was a good experience. So, you know, can't knock anybody for who has a difficult time questioning this stuff, because it's a very, very powerful experience that everyone has.
Like, was so just like a little kid at Christmas. Like, I don't know if you remember that when you were a little kid, but I remember my parents said I could get up at 7 a.m. And I remember waking up like at 5 and looking at the clock, constantly waiting for it to change. Finally, it was like 6:59, and the anticipation was just building to such an extreme. I couldn't wait, for that 7 o'clock thing so I could run in and open my presents. Well, times that by a million, and that's about what I felt. I was so excited to go home to God. And then I'm all alone in this pure white room, and I could see a light up above me, and it got brighter and brighter and brighter. And then it resolved into a personage, and it came down and stood in front of me, and it was God. And I knew it. Yeah, I knew it was my Father. And
I knew it was my Father. I knew it. I knew it. See, this is someone who has been there before. I really, really, your heart goes out to anyone who, it's just like, he's been reincarnated, right? Ryan has been reincarnated. There's no doubt. He knows that feeling.
And stood in front of me, and it was God. And I knew it. Yeah, I knew it was my Father. And I have never been more complete, more in love, more like so fulfilled as in that moment when I was with God. Like, it was like
I've never been. I'm sorry. Let him finish here.
more in love, more like so fulfilled as in that moment when I was with God. Like, it was like anything that could have happened to me in this life was completely healed in that moment.
Okay, so see how easy it could be for us to just forget about what we just experienced. Everything was forgotten, forgiven, healed in that moment, however you want to word it, right? That's how this cycle keeps going. We die. We hear from other NDEers who talk about how, their the lifetime they just came from was already fading. And we've heard confirmation of that many, many times. So if you're not as concerned, worried, or have a deep connection to the incarnation that you just came from, and you go to the light, you start having all those fading memories, it's easy again to see how you can keep reincarnating here. And then, not to mention, the soul group, all the connections, that we make along the way, all the attachments that we have, not just here, but just the general sensory experience within the matrix constructs itself. It's very, very easy to see how this can get ahead of us. And in turn, we continue to lose ourselves lifetime after lifetime.
And I felt so perfect and so in love, and just like,
so perfect.
It was the most amazing, completing feeling. Like, it's so hard to put into words. And people that have had near-death experiences like you will understand that. How do you explain something like the taste of salt to somebody that's never experienced that? Well, God's love was so incredible that I've never felt anything on this earth, even remotely close to it. And so it was so amazing. And then God like showed me my whole life. Like, it just flashed in front of my eyes, and it would stop and we would relive something and then move on. And every time it was like, did you see what you learned from that? Did you, like, that was the feeling. There was absolutely no judgment.
Did you see what you learned from it? No judgment. This is the same thing we hear all the time. There's no judgment, this and that. You know, what about the child who is born into an abusive family? What about the trafficking victim? I mean, we could pick a million different horrors that this world can give you, right? What about them? Did you see what you learned from that? Did you see what you learned from that? Really? Oh, when when your mother or your father tried to kill you, did you see what you learned from that? Did you see? I mean, it's ridiculous. Oh, when you were trafficked all over the United States or all over the world and made to do all these horrid acts. What were you, did you learn from that? You see what you learned from that? Utterly ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Everything was a beautiful, perfect lesson for me to learn from. And I remember this part that had just happened recently where my ex-wife, was my wife at the time, had left me for her best friend's husband, left me with 4 little kids. And I was devastated, just completely crushed. And I remember seeing that from God's perspective and him showing me this. And it was like, why was I so upset about that? I remember thinking that, like, it was such a beautiful experience for me to learn about me. And I felt nothing but love for my ex-wife and her situation. And it was just the most beautiful thing. And then
you hear that? The wife goes, cheats on him with the best friend's husband, I think. Her best friend's husband has 4 kids. He gets gutted, obviously, right? And, we're not going to get into, we don't know what his marriage was like or anything that happened, clearly. But like, he's talking about this, like, oh, like, when I was having my NDE, I realized, oh, it's okay. There's a lesson here. And again, Ryan, I haven't said anything. Normally I try to say something in the beginning. I am not at all talking down about you or your experience. I go over all sorts of different experience or cases, and there's nothing ever personal. I'm sorry to interrupt, guys, but I forgot to mention this at the beginning. So, Ryan, if you ever happen to be listening, nothing personal. I appreciate you sharing your story. I just have a different perspective as to what's going on in the afterlife. That's all.
I was so devastated, just completely crushed. And I remember seeing that from God's perspective and him showing me this. And it was like, why was I so upset about that? I remember thinking that, like, it was such a beautiful experience for me to learn about me.
Oh my God. Can you believe that? It was a beautiful experience for me to learn about me. His wife cheated on him with her best friend's husband. And they had 4 kids together. I mean, again, I don't want to take sides here, but just hearing this off what Ryan's sharing with us, it's like, that's heartbreaking. That's crushing. And he's somehow excusing it away. You see the power that this holds over people, over individuals. This is how powerful we're talking. That these types of things can be excused away. You know, common sense is flown right out the door. It's nowhere to be seen. It's not even in the same it's not even in the same realm of existence in any way, shape, or form. Everything is excused away, just like the horrors of the rest of the world that go on here. Yeah, there's a lot of good, but the horrors are always excused away. When the hell? Exactly. Gaslit. Exactly. Shy. Exactly. Gaslighting on an extreme level.
And him showing me this, and it was like, why was I so upset about that? I remember thinking,
because you got your heart crushed.
That like it was such a beautiful experience for me to learn about me, and I felt nothing but love for my ex-wife and her situation, and it was just the most beautiful thing. And then when I got back to Earth, I'm like, nah, I still hate her.
There you go, buddy. There you go. That's the spirit.
You know, no, I really don't. We're good friends now. But at the time, you know, the pain and the suffering that we go through here is so real, and it blinds us. And when we see things from God's perspective, when we see our life through his perspective, it's so beautiful, and it's completing, and everything's a perfect lesson. No matter how bad the situation you're going through, it is beautiful and perfect for you. And it is exactly what should be happening. And it's that having that faith and that trust in God, knowing that he's got us, is the key to that. Well, this all ended, and then God said to me, he says, do you want to come home with me, or do you want to go back to them? And he did this with his hand.
All right, so here is the fake offer. How many times have we seen this, right? The fake offer. Oh, would you like to stay, or would you like to go back? And, well, voila, here we go. You know, insert the family. Roll out the Matrix family and tug at the heartstrings. This is it's the same playbook, obviously a little altered each time, but it's the same playbook over and over and over again. I mean, seriously, massive data point. Dangling the family, dangling something back on Earth. All of a sudden, a thought form or thought implant is put into the experiencer's head that relates them back to something on Earth, and boom, that's it. The ball game's over, and they end up back on Earth.
This all ended, and then God said to me, he says, do you want to come home with me, or do you want to go back to them? And he did this with his hand. He upside down just kind of did this. And the floor we were standing on was pure white, and it started to go foggy and then go clear. And then we were standing in the air about 20 feet above my kids. And the movie was just ending in the theater room, and I could see them doing little shadow puppets and like attacking each other, you know, and doing these little shadow puppets. And I watched them do all this, and my heart just sunk. And I'm like, I can't leave them. They need me. And it was like right in the middle of my divorce, or my wife was leaving me for this other guy. And
oh, I bet he can't wait to go back.
It was like such a traumatic time, and I knew my kids.
Such a dramatic time. Oh, this poor guy. This poor guy.
It was like such a traumatic time, and I knew my kids needed me so bad. And I was like, no, they need me. And I said that to God. I'm like, I can't come home. And God said, okay, I'll see you again. And I thought there was going to be like this big hug goodbye, or at least a high five or a slap on the butt and say, go get him, Tiger. You know, something. No, I'm back in my body.
And that's the way it almost always happens. Instantly back in the body, or sometimes they feel like they're falling or flying even through like another tunnel or something. And this time it's clear that they had the setup, and they were, he was right above his body, very, very close proximity. So It's God's like, all right, back to your body, peace, I'm out. Next. All right, who's the next one I got to deceive and get back to their body? It's incredible. It really is. When you start to see this stuff for what it is, it's just mind blowing, because we see the patterns and they're everywhere. They're all over these experiences, and it's like deception blinking in neon green, right? Just like, hello, can you see it? I just wish we can convince more people to just do their own research. Take a look. If you're new or otherwise on the fence to this information, please, please take the next couple years to really dive into this stuff. Do your own research, make up your own conclusions, but I feel confident anyone with an open mind will see this for what it is and will come out the other end feeling self-empowered and realizing that you hold all the cards. Just don't fall for the BS. That's all. Because that's all this place has is smoke and mirrors. That's it. That's all it has. And you deserve better. You deserve to think bigger. Think beyond this limited experience. Think beyond the astral realm or this concept of God or source or creator or even your, deceased family and friends and pets and all that. Is that difficult? Yeah, it is. All right. But what's more important? Taking back control of you or falling back into the pit with a soul group that is also stuck here? See what I mean? It's like everybody has to get out. This isn't on their own terms. This is an individual journey. This is not a group journey. It's not a family journey. It is a solo journey from start to finish. Now, yeah, that just doesn't mean you disavow your friends and your family and live a pissed off existence every single day. No. You still got to enjoy yourself, make the best of it, and enjoy your last time here. But when it comes to, you're leading up into your death, and especially at the time of death, no. Get rid of it all the attachments, everything related to this sensory overload experience. You deserve better. Everybody listening deserves better. Enough of the excuses, enough of the making, just all these excuses for the horrors that go on here. And everything that is being told in the astral is completely contradictive to the reality of what's going on here. And yet it's just, la, 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 heads in the clouds. It's like all the horrors don't exist. You know what I was thinking about? I was thinking about the other day. And I'm sorry, but, I just got to say it like it is, right? I was in the restroom. And I was thinking, just think about the evacuation process, right? How nasty it is, right? That in and of itself is a good representation of what this place is all about, right? About what so-called creator, source, God provided, right? It's sickening, right? It makes you realize just what this control system thinks of us, right? I don't know. I don't know. I know it's a little much. I'm sorry, but I was just thinking about it. I was like, what? It's a good example as to what this damn system thinks of us, what this so-called creator thinks of us. Couldn't come up with a better design than that. Couldn't come up with a better design for the human body in general. Pain, suffering, all that stuff. Couldn't come up with a better plan, right? No. It's about as bad as it gets. Let's get real. Thank you, AA, for the very kind super chat. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
And it was like getting hit by a truck. Like I go from the most beautiful, blissful state I've ever been in to wham, I'm back in my body and I get hit by the electricity. And my thought was, my gosh, like, why would God send me back to my body but not get me off the electricity? I'm still being electrocuted. And I heard God's voice just as clear as somebody speaking to me. And he said, oh, did you ask for help? So God has a sense of humor. I'll tell you right now. He's a little bit of a smart ass. And I love him so much.
Did you ask for help? See, that's the thing, right? Asking for help. Asking you shall receive. Now, it's not going to be the case every time, but one thing that we see consistently is when someone's, not just their everyday life, right? But when someone's at the end of their ropes, completely can't take anymore, possibly contemplating on installing, deep depression, on the point of giving. Then and only then is when, well, not only then, but then is when the Matrix can step in. And my thought on that is that it's playing interference. And you're going to hear an interesting story that Ryan talks about where he was at the end of his ropes. And it just goes and proves again how the Matrix will step in, but it has to be the far end of extreme. And you're going to see exactly where he was at and how this all plays out and how, you get a little messenger.
And
AKA the so-called God, source, creator.
But like, it was so just like, did you ask for help? But it's so true. How often do we get in situations and we don't ask for help? And God is bound to let us experience that until we do ask for help.
No. You know how many people I know? There's a difference. There is a difference between those at the end of their ropes, like completely, again, we're talking the extreme. And then those who are, maybe having a really rough go at it and close to their breaking point and asking for help. Those who pray to God, ask for forgiveness and for God to appear or talk to them or whatever the case may be. You know how many unanswered calls occur? Endless. So it really isn't the case. It's just not. It has to be extreme. And of course, there could be some, anomalies here and there. But for the most part, it happens when someone is at their breaking point.
But like, it was so just like, did you ask for help? But it's so true. How often do we get in situations and we don't ask for help? And God is bound to let us experience that until we do ask for help.
That's so funny because I have said a few times recently, people say, what's one thing you've learned out of hearing all these NDEs? And I said, ask.
Yes, it's key. It's so critical. And
that goes right to the whole consent thing. It does. It's like you are asking for interaction and the Matrix may provide it. Not always, but it may provide it based on your situation. And if it thinks it's running up against your free will, possibly making a decision to, let's just say, uninstall or maybe even veer off the life script in a major way that it doesn't find suitable. I don't know. The point is it is an interaction being made between the experiencer or the individual and something in the Matrix. All right? Ask and you shall receive.
It's just so cute how he asked it. It's like, oh, did you ask for help? And I was like, no, I didn't. And I'm like, "Dear God, please help." And as soon as I said that, the cord moved. So if you remember, I'm holding onto this cord right here and I'm trying to pull it out and I'm just being electrocuted. I'm doing the funky chickens, black smoke's coming out. And I felt it like pull down and move. And I went, oh my gosh. So I grabbed it and I started pulling. Well, here's the interesting thing. Like, no matter how strong I am, I could be the Incredible Hulk. And I could not overcome your own muscles when you're being electrocuted. So the impossible part, God overcame, but he still made me do every bit of effort that I could to get that cord out of my mouth. I remember struggling and pulling on that and then it popping out of my mouth. And it was like that was keeping me awake or alert. I don't know, the electricity, because as soon as I unplugged it, it was like unplugging a TV. Like my vision went whoom, and everything went black and I hit the ground. And about that time, my kid hears me, that's 12 years old, and he comes running in and sees me laying on the ground. And so he runs over and starts shaking me. And he said that I just took this breath, this spontaneous breath. My eyes popped open and I went, and he went, oh my gosh. And that's all I remember seeing him is this, oh, and he grabs the phone, he calls 911, and he says, I just found my dad on the ground. The black smoke's coming out of his mouth, and he's got a big hole in his tongue, and he wasn't breathing. And I started shaking him, and he took a breath. You know. Well, anyway, they took me up to the hospital and wheeled me in, and the doctor comes in and examines me, and he looks at my tongue, and I had charcoal, a piece about the size of a quarter, right through the middle of my tongue, where those three metal prongs had touched. It had gotten so hot in there that it didn't just cook the meat, it burnt it to charcoal. So when he pushed on it, it just crumbled. It got so hot in there that it melted the fillings in my mouth. The silver fillings in my teeth turned all to silver.
Damn, can you imagine? Can you believe that? That's freaking nuts. Nuts.
And they were, instead of that black color that they kind of are, you know, after years, they were like brand new again. They were all shiny. And I had one that actually exploded and broke apart. And the doctor looks at it, he looks at my mouth, and he says, well, I'm not worried about your tongue. He says, your tongue's going to heal up, you know, within just a matter of weeks. He says, the tongue's one of the most fastest healing parts of your body if it's injured.
Now, see, that was an interesting little fact. Did any of you know that? I never knew that. I didn't know that the tongue was one of the fastest healing things in the body. Interesting, isn't it? You learn something new every day. Any of you know that?
You know, within just a matter of weeks, he says, the tongue's one of the most fastest healing parts of your body if it's injured. He said, so your tongue's going to be fine. You're going to end up with a nice scar and a story. And I've got just a little scar right there. So you can see that. So that's all I ended up with that. And then,
and if you look at his tongue, it's not even that bad. It really isn't. I mean, he shows it. I barely see anything.
Right there. So you can see that. So that's all I ended up with that. Yeah. And then he said, the dentist will be able to fix your teeth. And he said, you'll get a crown or whatever. And not worried about your teeth. I'm not worried about your tongue. He said, what I am worried about, he said, is when you take 110 electricity in your body, it cooks you from the inside out. He says, where 220 will blow off body parts and burn you externally.
Damn.
He says, 110 will cook you internally. He says, so what I'm worried about is every one of your organs being cooked. He says it's not if that happened, it's how bad. Because given the damage to your mouth and the time that you were down, he says it's not if, it's how much. He said, so we're going to do some enzyme tests on you. We're going to do some blood work. We'll be able to see what enzymes and what organs were damaged by what enzymes have been given off. Like troponin, when you have a heart attack, your heart gives off troponin, which is an enzyme, a cardiac enzyme, which it identifies that you've had a heart attack. So as these organs are damaged, they give off different enzymes. And so he they were afraid my airway was going to swell. So they put me out, they intubated me. And in the morning, they woke me up and the tube was out and they're taking my IVs off. And then the doctor comes in and he comes over and he says, well, he says, I've discharged you from the hospital. You can go home. And I went, what? He says, yeah. He said, I ran your enzyme tests 3 times because I didn't believe the results. I even went down and supervised it at the lab the last time because I thought they must be doing something wrong. He says, I was so afraid you were going to MODS, which is multiple organ failure. And he said, and die in the night. He said, I can't believe that you have 0 enzymes in your blood. He says, there's nothing wrong internally with you. It's all in your tongue. He says, that's physically impossible how electricity works. He says, you're a miracle. He says, I'm a man of science, not of faith. He says, but go home and count your blessings. So I went home and I was like, kind of just almost blown away from it, like the whole experience. Like I wasn't really sure. And I didn't ever feel like I had been a very righteous man, which you consider like good church guy, you know, and all this. And I always had this love for God in my heart, like ever since I was a little kid, loved God. But I always felt like I succumbed to my sins too easily. And so I always thought I was a bad person, you know.
Oh, that's the Matrix special. The fear, guilt, shame matrix. I love that. Got you right where they want you.
And then I had this experience with God and he was going to take me home with him. And I couldn't quite, you know, correlate the two together. And I'm like, I didn't feel like I had the right to talk to anybody about God because I wasn't like a religious guy or anything. So I kind of kept my mouth shut. I told my soon-to-be ex-wife and I told my parents, and that was about it. And then like 12 years go by and I had gotten remarried and built a business and all this. And I had this experience like 12 years later. And I was going through another divorce. We lost this business that was worth millions and kind of had an investor try to steal it from us and tie us up in court and just ruined everything. And I was so depressed. And I remember I was up at this place called Lava Hot Springs in Idaho. And it was on New Year's Day, 2013, like 12 years after my near-death experience. And I was praying to God and I was like, I'm done. Like I made the wrong choice in coming back. Like I do not want to be here. And I'm begging God, like begging him. I'm like, I don't want to take my own life, but give me an aneurysm, drop a meteor on me, a heart attack. I don't care, but I want to come home. I made the wrong decision. Like, please just, you know, and I'm begging God to take me home. And I heard God's voice physically again. And the last time I heard it, he said, oh, did you ask for help? This time I heard, leaving my presence one time is traumatic for everyone because you leave nothing but the presence of love.
You hear the pompousness of this so-called God? Leaving my demiurgic presence is traumatic enough. But, I mean, really, talk about this pompous so-called God.
And the last time I heard it, he said, oh, did you ask for help? This time I heard, leaving my presence one time is traumatic for everyone because you leave nothing but the presence of love. For you to remember what my love feels like and chose to leave a second time has left such a hole in you that you've tried to fill it with everything but me. But what you really want is me. And when God said that, something happened to me physically. There was a change that came over me. Like I felt a physical clunk in my body. Like it was like clunk. And I shouted at the top of my lungs. And I put my fist in the air and I'm like, dude, I'm yours.
Oh.
and yelled at the top of my lungs. Well, there was people at the hot springs, and I'm sure they thought I was crazy, you know. This guy off by himself, and all of a sudden yells, "Dude, I'm yours," at the sky, you know. But I didn't really care at that moment. I felt God claim me as much as I was claiming him. Like,
Oh, God. I felt God claim me as much as I claimed him. God claimed Ryan. See, this is the problem. It's a give and take. It's falling victim to this perceived entity outside of ourselves that we think is above us, that we think controls us. I mean, it's just an amazing example of it, right? Just handing yourself over. And I feel bad for Ryan. Ryan seems like a good guy. He's been through hell, right? But at the end of the day, this is what I like to call a customer for life, a matrix customer for life. And it's true, because there is nothing you can say or do or point out that will ever convince him or most of these experiencers otherwise, because they think who they are dealing with is actually a just, righteous, good being who is on their side, when they are just completely lost to what's going on in the realm of reality. That is the human experience. Just think about what he was talking about, what happened with him and his ex-wife, right? And we don't know the ex-wife's story, right? We don't know what happened. We don't know if, what, if anything, Ryan may have done. We don't know, right? But let's just, for sake of argument, say, Ryan did the best he could, and the wife was just, promiscuous and all this stuff. Let's just say that's what happened, all right? And I really don't like going with that assumption, but let's just, for sake of argument, say that. He has the realization when he's having his NDE that, oh, but this was a lesson. Now I know why this all occurred. It happened for a reason, blah, blah. And then what did he say? When he got back here, oh, well, I hate her. Can't stand her. I mean, that was the truth, see? Regardless of the situation, right? I mean, it's the mother of his children, for Christ's sake. But you saw how he transitioned in his way of thinking, right? Went from excuse. Oh, this is a big learning experience, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, oh, back to earth and the realization of what the situation is, right? We'll leave it at that. But it's so blatant.
Much as I was claiming him, like it was this incredible claiming of each other. Like I was God's, he was mine. And I made him a promise right then and there. I'm like, everything I own, everything I will ever do is yours. And I will speak to people about you. I will tell people of your love. And so at that point, I had what I call my God change. And I started telling people about my near-death experience. And I started telling people about how God sees us and how much he loves us. And I walked around for like 2 weeks after this experience in a complete bliss cloud. Like it was the closest that I had ever been to heaven outside of heaven. Like I felt like a spiritual being having a temporary physical experience, not this physical being that every once in a while we have a spiritual experience. And I had so many incredible things happen during this 2-week period when I was so connected to God. Like I've got this tattoo of Michael the Archangel on this shoulder. And Michael came to me and told me who I was in the pre-existence and told me what I was and that I was a warrior angel, and what my purpose was, that I was a warrior angel.
Warrior.
So that I was one of his warrior angels. So Michael, if you know much about him, he's like the leader of God's army, right? And he's a warrior angel and protects us from evil. Well, that was one of the things that he told me during that time. And then I had some other experiences that were just so incredible, that helped define me as a person and define my role of what I was. Like, I remember
Define his role.
it helped define me as a person and define my role of what I was. Like, I remember I got done photographing this wedding and I was walking down the street and this homeless lady came up to me, and she was like really bad meth teeth, if you've ever seen that. And she was probably 35, but she looks like she was 70 just because, you know, the drugs, what they'd done to her body. And she asked me if I had any money, and I checked my pockets. I said, no, I'm sorry, I don't. And I started to walk away from her. And in my head, I remember going, she's repulsive. And I remember saying, what bad choices got her to this point, you know? And I heard God's voice just clear as a bell. And it said, oh, really? Would you like to see how I still see my daughter? And I went, and I stopped right where I was at. And I went, yeah. And I turned back to her. And I saw this homeless person, and their spirit came out of their body and started floating in front of their face. And it was almost like you could see through it like this hologram. And their spirit was made of gold dust, it kind of looked like. And it was this shimmery gold dust. And her spirit was the most beautiful, like unearthly beauty. Like take your breath away beauty. And I'm staring at her with my mouth just agape. And I was like, and she's looking at me like my cheese slid off my cracker. You know, what's wrong with this idiot? And I heard God's voice, and he said, this is how I still see my daughter. And I went, wow, I'm a judgmental asshole. I mean, excuse me for swearing, but that's how I thought of myself, you know.
Oh, I think we should cancel him.
Like, I'm a jerk. And I was so blown away with how beautiful this God saw this person, that we would look upon and go, they failed at life. And this is how God still sees them. And I knew at that point that I could never judge anybody again. You know, that we are all on our journey. And in God's mercy, in his eyes, we are all perfect. And through him, we are made perfect.
Okay, so a bunch of things I want to say. The whole thing with Archangel Michael, or whatever the case may be, right? Just an entity of the Matrix, right? Now, we see these things pop up, you know, not necessarily Archangel Michael, but although there's a number out there who claim interactions with him. And, you know, it may very well be the Matrix's version of that, but what is this when you really boil it down? This is stroking Ryan's ego. That's what it's all about. It's keeping him in the game, keeping him in the loop, making sure he gets a false sense of purpose, right? If it wasn't Archangel Michael, it would be, you know, whoever, right? Any other entity, deity of the Matrix that can present itself or telepathically communicate, or whatever the case may be. All right. It's the same thing over and over and over again. And all it's doing is stroking the ego. The same thing like those who feel they, you know, they're on a mission, right? They have this mission to complete and they got to do this, they got to do that. It's all about ego, right? It's all about getting someone to feel special. And you know what? It's a good coping mechanism, and I get it, but at it, like when you really dig at the roots of what it is, let's just call it what it is. It's stroking the ego to keep someone in the game for this lifetime. And then once this lifetime's over, memory wipe, rinse and repeat, different life script, similar life script, same soul group, extended soul group, whatever the case may be, and rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. It's the same thing. And what does that do? It makes someone feel like they have a reason or a purpose, that they didn't just come here to get their ass kicked, that they came here to get their ass kicked for a reason. I mean, that's just the sad truth, that this place is one big fat deception. And not Ryan's case, but the Earth realm experience is one big fat deception. And it's up to us to figure out what's going on here and take back control of who and what we are. And never, ever fall into this dumpster fire again.
And this is how he still, this is the unconditional love that he talks about. That it wasn't like he's disappointed with us, but he sees us this way still. And that was such a poignant experience. And then I had one other one before the end of this 2-week period. And I was trying to be perfect, and I thought, well, I've had this near-death experience. I've had this God change experience. I've seen an angel. I need to be like the most perfect. I got to quit swearing, which obviously I haven't done that very well. But right, I need to be perfect, and this is what I was thinking with to myself, that I needed to be this holy person that didn't make mistakes, and I was trying to be perfect. And I remember messing up and committing a sin, and I was so upset with myself. I went home and I got on my knees and I prayed for 2 hours, like just pouring my heart out to God. Like, I don't know how I can do this. I'm such a piece of white dog crap on the side of the road, because I promised you, I gave my life to you. I have had these experiences. I know you're real. It's not faith anymore. This is a knowledge. And yet I still, like the scripture, dog returning to his vomit, I still succumb to my sins, and I still fail, and I still do these things, and I'm so sorry. And I got the biggest mental stick I have, and I'm just beating myself with it, just like what a piece of crap I am. And I'm so sorry, and I'm begging God for forgiveness. Well, I get done, and I'm just emotionally wrung out like a dish rag, like I have nothing left in me. And I crawled into bed, and I shut the light off, and I was just starting to go to sleep, and I saw this gold coin about the size of a small salad plate floating in front of my face. And I was like, what the heck? Like, I've never done drugs. I know I'm not hallucinating. Am I having a stroke? What's going on? And I put my hand through it, and it wouldn't change it. And it was this old kind of Roman looking coin with like this guy in profile. And he has those fronds in his hair, right here above his ear, and like an old Roman emperor looking dude. And I'm looking at the coin, and it's this beautiful gold coin. And I'm like, what is this? I remember saying that. I heard God's voice, and he says, this is you. And I'm like, okay, that does not clear up anything, like what? I'm the old dude on the coin. I don't know what. And then the coin starts to rotate, and it slowly turns, and it turns all the way around. And the backside is so corroded, like it looked like it'd been at the bottom of the ocean. Had like this, corrosion over the top. You couldn't even see what the design on the backside was. It was so corroded and black. And then God said, I love both sides of you the same.
I love both sides of duality. And isn't it interesting how we have the Greco-Roman kind of thing going on here again? Because that's very present in the astral realm. So, especially like the architecture, things like that. It's the continuity of familiarity, so that your surroundings, you're familiar with something here, and it carries over into the astral, and you recognize it. So it makes you, or provides some form of comfort. In this case, obviously, I'm going a little bit farther with it, but because it's a different, it's, in my opinion, representing duality, both sides of Ryan, perfection, or the good and the bad. Duality.
And I still didn't quite get that. Like, I don't get it. And then now I do. Like, he loves the side of me that's perfect. the side of me that is this warrior for God, the side of me that is this loving, moral, perfect person. But he also loves the side of me that screws up. He also loves the side of me that makes mistakes. He loves the side of me that fails and falls down.
Unconditional.
And he loves both sides of me the same. So then I go to sleep and I'm just trying to process this whole thing. And I have this vivid dream that didn't even seem like a dream. It felt really real, if you've had one of those before. And I was in the forest, and I'm going through the forest, and I've got this huge canvas sack on my back, and I'm carrying this. And if you've ever gone like through the scrub oak or anything and got caught in it, I'm getting scratched by branches, and my sack's getting hung up, and I'm trying to make it through and navigate my way. But all I remember is having this panicky feeling to get out of the forest, like really bad panic. I had to get out of there. And I'm trying to find a way, and I look off to my left, and I see this path running along beside me. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to try to get over to that path because that looks a little clearer. And then I see a man come walking up the path, and he's got a white robe on that comes down to about mid-calf. And he's got bare legs and sandals on. And I knew instantly who it was. I could never make it through this story. I knew instantly who it was. And I dropped to my knees. And I started to bawl.
Submit.
And the Savior came and stood in front of me. And I remember looking down, and I could see the wounds in his feet. And I just remember just feeling so exhausted and so worn out. And the Savior said, give me your burden. And I hugged it, and I pulled it back toward me, and I'm like, no, I love you too much. This would hurt you. No, I'm not giving it to you. I don't want to hurt you. I love you too much. And the Savior said, it's already mine. I've already paid for it.
It's already mine.
And I went,
it's already mine.
Oh yeah, like 2,000 years ago. And I remember pushing it toward him, and then he knelt down, and all I was doing was looking at his feet. I couldn't look him in the face. And he lifted my chin up, and he made me look him in the eyes. And he had the most beautiful, kind eyes I've ever looked into. And he looked at me and he said, your sins are forgiven. And I woke up just bawling from that, just bawling. And
I mean, you hear how he's just given himself up to the Matrix every step of the way. Every step of the way. No fault of his own. I understand Ryan had a powerful, formative, mind-blowing experience, but this is the functionality of how the system works. It's up front, right in our faces.
I've ever looked into. And he looked at me and he said, your sins are forgiven. And I woke up just bawling from that, just bawling. And those were such defining moments. And I don't know if it's been with you, but it's been years since I've had anything like that happen. And it's been years where you can start questioning yourself, like, did that really happen? But it was so poignant for me. Like, I remember every detail of my near-death experience. I remember every detail of that dream and how it made me feel and how I am enough for God and how we all are. And that he loves us unconditionally. And that's the thing we came down here to experience. We came down, you do not know what you are until you know what you're not. You do not know what a beautiful...
Doesn't that kind of seem like a scam? Because you're put in a meat suit that is limited in its abilities to perceive your own essence. And until that is stripped away from you, that's when things open up and you start to realize who and what you are. Well, then, boom, what comes rolling on in is the Matrix, so-called source, creator, God, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, whoever, deceased family, on and on and on, ready to scoop you right up. This is the problem. I mean, there's no reason. What are you learning? What are you growing from by coming here lifetime after lifetime with no memory of where you came from, why you are here, or where you are going? Yeah, you can figure out while you're here where you can go, but that's in relation to the matrix, not in relation to liberating yourself from this entire system.
Beautiful spring day is until you've gone through a hard winter. You know, you've gone through, like here in Utah, we had just the most snow and cold, terrible winter we've gone through since like the early 80s. We got so much snow and it was just constant and it was so cold. And I remember the first day of spring and it was like 50 degrees and I'm out there in a t-shirt going, whoa, you know, and it's just so much joy. And it's that contrast that gives us joy. We have to know what we're not. We have to know what it's like to be sick, to even appreciate what it is to be healthy. We have to know what it's like to be old, to appreciate youth. We have to know what it's like to have our heart broken, to really know even what love is. So it's the gifts of this opposition. It's the gifts of what's going on in your life that made you what you're not, to help define what you are, which is love. And love and this beautiful purpose of sharing this. And it's like, that's the time that I feel alive. That's the time that I feel best, is when I'm talking to people about God, when I'm explaining my story to them and I get to share with them. I'm not a perfect man. I am far from perfect, but I do love God and I know God loves me. And if he can love me, he can love anybody, you know, type of thing, because I am not perfect, you know, and I've made so many mistakes. And yet, because of that, because of the love that he has for me, drives me to share my story, drives me to explain to people how he feels about them, how you are perfect right where you're at, that you have purpose being here. You have purpose sharing your love with others and your story. How important is your story for someone? How important is your story to lift somebody else up?
Again, we can go back to what we talked about earlier in the stream. Purpose. What is the purpose of someone who's being sex trafficked? Huh? What's the purpose of someone going through absolute hell in the slums of India, North Korea, no plumbing, dirty water, having to hike every day to grab water for your family? What's the purpose there? Malnutrition. All these different things that can occur while you're here. What's their purpose? To suffer greatly? See, this is where it all falls apart. The problem is, many who grow up in the West, you know, we grow up in these situations where we have most of the necessities. We have running water, although poisoned. We have electricity. We have food, although poisoned. And, you know, you have your basic needs most of the time. Not all the time. Obviously, there's many, many exceptions. And for those who are homeless, just think about those who are homeless right now. There's so many suffering. And how long do they have to suffer until they realize, quote unquote, their purpose? What are they learning from? What are they growing from? You know, let's just get real. You have to think about others. Even if your life hasn't been hit with, I guess, a lot of suffering, you still have to think about others and what they go through. But I think no matter what, if you grow up, or I'm not just grow up, but like if you're born into this matrix, suffering just comes with the program. Now there's varying levels of that suffering, but the point is it's there, right? And it could be, physical problems, mental problems. It could be a whole host of issues, necessities. You think of it, it's there. And some are worse than others, but that doesn't diminish, person A versus person Z's suffering. Obviously, there's different levels of that suffering and trauma, but in the end, let's just call it what it is. Nonsensical. None of it makes sense. And you have to put yourself in the shoes of others if you've had an easier ride this lifetime, which I don't think many here have had. That's something I've pretty much seen consistently with our group.
And that's kind of my message and kind of what I do. And so I've done photography for all those years, and I was kind of feeling like I wanted to give back again. And one of the ways I loved feeling like I was of service was being a firefighter. So at 52 years old, I went back through the fire academy, had to redo all my certificates, get my Fire 1, my Fire 2, my hazmat, all the different certificates that I've got now. And then I got my EMT and my advanced EMT and then paramedic. And I'm back in a job where I feel like I can make a difference, and that I get to serve people every day, and that I get to make a physical difference. So like firefighters don't get paid a lot of money. So it's like, it's a poor career choice that way, but it's a great career choice for feeling like you're making a difference. And the one thing, so I'm really glad that you reached out to me, because the one thing that I kind of feel like I've let slip lately is speaking to people about God. And there was a time I did that so much, and I wrote a book. I don't know if you've seen that one. It's on Amazon. It's called You Were Born a Warrior by Ryan Rampton. And I'm actually in the process of rewriting it right now, because I've had some experiences since then I wanted to add in. But it goes through about 20 different near-death experiences and all the things that happened in my life, and the crazy ways God has saved me. And I could never figure out why he kept saving me, why he let this person pass and why he saved me.
Matrix marketing department, baby. Gotta get that word out. And so, like, when he talks about 20 near-death experience, remember, he talked about how he was flying a plane and had an issue, talked about how he ran out of air, scuba diving, things like that. I don't necessarily know if they were, actual near-death experiences, because there's this big mix-up online between an actual near-death experience, like what we're hearing from Ryan today about his actual experience outside the body. And then there's another set of near-death experiences where they're close calls, right? So these things are lumped together. It drives me nuts, because if you're trying to search for experience or cases, you run across all these close calls, which, obviously, yeah, they're near-death experiences, but, an actual NDE is outside the body, and anyways, go a little bit longer, then we're going to take a break.
And I didn't feel worthy to be saved. And, but God always has his purpose, and God always knows what he's doing. We may not. And, so I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys today and to tell you how much God loves you, that you're absolutely perfect just how you are. That where you're at right now, this moment, is where you're supposed to be.
That's right. Liberation, baby.
The experiences that you're having help define you. and help you remember what you are.
What about those who don't remember, which is the vast majority of the population? What about them?
Define you and help you remember what you are and define what you're not. So anyway, I think that's about all I got.
Okay, so what we're going to do is take about maybe 5-6 minutes here, and I'll be right back. So relax, maybe take a stretch break, and we'll be back shortly. Thanks so much, my friends. You know, I'm not going to waste too much time, but for any of you interested, I am going to be doing a stream on the Truth in Gaming channel right after this. And it's a game called The Wild Eternal. And it's basically, can you escape the cycle of reincarnation? If you want to check out more details, there's a description as well as a trailer in the at that link, and you can also set a reminder. With YouTube, you should be able to you should be routed right over there, I think, or at least offered a path to the game. And that'll be starting about 5-10 minutes after this stream concludes, which I hope is, we still got a little ways to go. So appreciate all your patience. I'm really sorry. I don't know what the hell happened, but I'm definitely going to look into it. All right. I mean, the stream elements thing, that was really weird. That made no sense. Anyways, let's get back into it.
Have me levitating. Yeah.
Well, good.
Yeah. This thing about being unworthy and worthy, I did not realize till I was 55 years old and talked to a publisher about publishing my book. And the first thing I said to him was, I don't think it's worthy. And he's a former monk. And he said, it's worthy because you're worthy. And I could not understand, I'm 62 now, 7 years, why that affected me. And I've talked about that until I heard you talking to Lee Whitting this morning. I was listening to your on NDE radio, your interview with him, and you were talking about something about worthy and unworthy. And it dawned on me, I had lived 55 years feeling unworthy.
Right.
I was abused as a child. Then my ex didn't love me. Like nobody loved me. Coworkers hated me. And I went through my entire life feeling unworthy of love and didn't know it because it was such a part of my DNA. And when he said that to me, the publisher said, it's worthy because you're worthy. And I have said since then, it healed me on the spot. And I didn't realize how or why until I was listening to you this morning on Lee, that, oh my gosh, I had lived 55 years feeling unworthy. Right. And all it took was him to say, it's worthy because you're worthy. I was like, that is a powerful word, worthy.
It is. Because think about it. We came down here to feel not worthy. So we knew what we're not. Like, I always relate it back to, Michael Jordan, that story. He got kicked off the high school basketball team. They told him, pick a different sport. You're not meant to play basketball. Are you kidding me? Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player of all time, right? Arguably. But, he was kicked off the team because he was not worthy. Well, that drove him to go shoot 1,000 free throws every day. That drove him to push himself to become what he considered worthy. We do the same thing in this life. We have experiences that tell us we're not worthy. We have people that reject us. We have experiences where we fail, where we hurt people, where we sin. We do these things that are against our character, that are against who we are. And so we feel unworthy. We feel just terrible about ourselves. And God says no. The monk said, no, you are worthy. And it's like, it's an aha moment where we're like, yeah, you know what? We were kind of set up. If you think about this.
Yeah, we were set up.
always loved the movie Avatar, the big blue guy.
Okay, so before he goes into it, I think what they're talking about is really important for everyone to kind of soak in. I could relate with Peggy in a big way here because I felt the same way for a good portion of my life. And it took a lot for me to kind of break out of my shell, so to say, and feel worthy and also self-love. It's important that you love yourself. For is, screwed up as the whole new age thing is, right? There are some great teachings about self-love. There really are. And same thing within Zen Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism. There's some really, really good practices where you can implement them and start to wash away the facade of feeling unworthy and not loved. And so it's really, really important that anyone who may feel that way, that just know that don't worry about what other people think. Don't let anyone's opinion or any ideas, like I used to get ideas like cooked up in my head. I'd always be worried about what other people thought. Now it's a joke, total joke. People do videos on my channel. I don't care. I don't care what they have to say. It doesn't mean anything to me. But if that happened, maybe 10 years ago, something like that, I would have taken it a lot differently. It's just incredible what implementing certain spiritual practices and mindsets into your daily life can do. And one of the things I know I talk about a lot, but it's really important, are affirmations. I'm telling you, my friends, if you're down in the dumps, if you're in the pits right now, having trouble getting through day to day, working on a daily affirmation practice in the morning when you get up is the best thing you can do. I promise you, if you stick with it and don't look at it as like some airy fairy BS, right? If you really allow yourself to open and let those types of things through you with your intention, which is just to help you constructively with your day-to-day life, I promise you, positive affirmations, you can even create your own, right? Those things can really do a number to help you get through. I promise you. You just have to allow them in. That's all. Okay? So, the unworthiness, boy, do I relate to that. But that's come and gone. Now I look at myself as, just standing strong and, nothing's going to plow me down. Nothing. I don't care who and what you are. I don't care what you think. None of it matters. Just do you. But, at the same time, I'm not going to let negativity into my life either. I'm not going to let someone else pull me down just because they're fucked in the head, I mean, and boy, there's a number out there. There really are. Not many, but there's a few out there who like to cast down their misery on others, and don't let them do that. Just don't let them do it. Anyways, so that's it. Just remember, self-love, don't allow the fear, guilt, shame aspects to this matrix get the best of you, my friends, because you all deserve the best. Okay? That's all.
So remember, he gets in, he controls this body. Well, our spirits are in this avatar. Our spirits are in this avatar that's imperfect, that is going to fail. But our spirits are perfect. We are worthy. But our avatar isn't. And it's not meant to be. It's meant to be a certain way to teach you. And by being imperfect, teaches us compassion, forgiveness, all of these traits that we would never know. If you think everybody was perfect, we would never know compassion. We would never know forgiveness. We would never know any of these high vibration things that we experience. It's because of our unworthiness that we get to feel these things. It's because that we felt unworthy. But one of the other perfect analogies that God shared with me one time was the pendulum. If you think about this. So some people in this life, they're a pendulum, and they swing a little bit this way into, like, we'll say sin or suffering. Some people swing farther, death of a child or loss of a spouse. Some people swing farther, like Christ, that took on every sin, every emotion, every feeling of not being enough that you could ever feel, and swing way over here. But when you swing back the other way, it swings equal to what you experience. So if you experience a lot of suffering this way, well, guess what? This is your joy is. It's equal to that. And that's what's so beautiful about this is when you let yourself swing into God's love and accept it, accept that you're worthy. This joy that you feel is exactly equal to the pain and the sorrow that you felt. There's a book called The Prophet by Kahlil Gibran. I think I'm saying that right. But in there he says, even the flute that makes a beautiful sound was hollowed out with knives. So he talks about pain and suffering and how that joy and suffering are bedfellows. And when one's sitting at your bed, the other's standing up, or and it's like you have to have both to really experience this fully. And that's why this life is so beautiful. We get to come down here and experience these things. If everything was all light all the time, we would have no definition. Everything would just be pure white, blinding. But because we have darkness, because we have shadow, we see form, we see shapes. It helps define things. And I think that's just what's so beautiful about, what we experience is that we get to define who we are again through this love.
The Prophet, is that a really old book?
Yeah, it is.
I think in the movie Walk the Line about Johnny Cash, Reese Witherspoon that plays Gene, she hands him that book, The Prophet.
Yes, yes, she did.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorites. I sing Johnny Cash. So he's my favorite go-to for karaoke. My wife's an amazing singer. We do Jackson together, and she sings June Carter just like, and everybody's all like, that was amazing, but, and
my middle name is June.
Oh, it is? So Johnny
after my mom's middle name.
In my heart. So I do remember when she gave him that book, and it's a beautiful book. I really recommend it to look it up. Kahlil Gibran's and it's called The Prophet. And I don't remember how long ago it was written, but it's very, very old. And but there's just so much wisdom in that. And when you think about all the different ways, it's kind of funny because we start thinking that God is a certain way, and I always you've got a piece of paper with a hole punched in it, and you're like, wow, I can see the sky through this hole. And somebody else says, no, that's not the sky. This is the sky. And they're looking through their hole. And then God pulls all the papers away and no, this is the sky. It's all of it, And we get caught up into our way has to be the right way, where really you have an individual path to God. You have an individual course that God's guiding you on, that he's bringing you along, and he's
stringing you along. Stringing you along. Matrix is stringing you along. It's not God. There's nothing exterior to yourself that's going to be the savior or the cushion that's going to wipe away all your worries and concerns. No, it is concerned with one thing and one thing only. And that's to keep you coming back, or at least at a minimum, contained within this system. That's the bottom line. There is no learning. Well, there is learning. The only thing to learn here is that you're in one big fat deception and that you need to empower yourself and say no. That's it. And go your own way, do your own thing, non-interference, sovereignty, liberation, non-interference, all those things. Do your own thing. Don't let anything distract you. Keep your eye on the prize. Liberation all the way.
You have an individual course that God's guiding you on, that he's bringing you along, and he's teaching you along the way. And that's the perfect path, is your path. It's not my path. Like, I can't share with people, hey, this is the key to everything, because no, it's only been the key to my life. And heck, most of the time I messed it up still. So, thank goodness for grace.
It amazes me that God knows within a couple words, a short sentence, what to say. That's exactly what we need at that time.
Absolutely.
And when I was 35, my ex, we'd been married 16 years, had 3 boys, and he asked for a divorce and et cetera. And then he took the boys for their first visit, and the house is quiet. I'm alone. We're out in the country, TV and radio, everything's off. There's silence. It's like this silence hurt. Not having my family there. And I'm the type person, I don't cry for anybody. And even my ex. And so I went in the bathroom, shut the door. And like for the first time, I don't know when, I sat and bawled. And as I'm crying, I'm thinking, my family, my siblings, parents didn't love me. Now I find out my husband, 16 years, never loved me. And I'm bawling, I'm thinking, why, feeling unlovable. And I heard in front of the mirror, I heard God's voice clearly say, my child. That's all he needed to say. Like this hot face was now these cold tears. I'm jumping up, rejoicing. A few hours later, my ex calls, and we want to go to this party down the river. And there was all these people down the river, and there was a band there. And I danced by myself for hours and hours, not speaking to anybody, not looking at anybody. I blocked everybody out. And my ex keeps trying to get me to come go with him, get on the boat. And I think he was going to kill me that night. And, asking for the divorce didn't tear me up. He didn't get to see me fall apart. So I think he was going to what he intended to earlier, was just go and kill me. But I'm like, no. And my feet were black for weeks from dancing barefoot. And I have a little bit of American Indian in me. And I got thinking last night about that. And I'm like, it was like I was doing an Indian dance.
Yeah.
I was this stomping, doing this like a rain dance or something. Then I could tell every once in a while, corner of my eye, I catch people just staring at me. I mean, other people were dancing too, but they were stopping, like normal people. I wasn't. I was in a zone for hours and hours. And all I could think about was my child. And nobody needed to hear about it. It was just for me. I was free. For the first time in my life at 30, I was free. And felt accepted.
My heart aches for Peggy. It really does. She seems like a very good spirited being, right? We've watched a lot of her interviews, and, she gives away bits and pieces of her life. We know she was abused as a child, wasn't provided love, or at least what should have been provided to her. And then she gets older, she has 3 kids, she's married for, what would she say, 16 years. She's with an abusive husband, and she's talking about how he may have had intentions to kill her that night. That means he was really abusive, right? Not just sad, And you can see how an experience like an NDE, because Peggy obviously had one, which maybe we'll go over her experience someday. It's just sad. It really is. But see how easy it is for the Matrix to just weasel its way in and take over someone like Peggy? It fortifies her somewhat existing belief system as a child, which was, I know she grew up in a heavily religious household, and has an NDE later on in life, has all this trauma. I mean, it's just sad because she doesn't deserve to have to come back here. She doesn't deserve to have to be a cog in the wheel of the Matrix. And there's just no way I can ever have a conversation with her about this because the experience that she had was so powerful. That's the problem. We talked about it earlier in the stream, how these powerful experiences really, really take hold of someone. I mean, we're witnessing it with the conversation today. These things, they put the blinders up, the sensory experience, the baked belief systems that come true, even in the smallest, silliest, lamest ways possible. Think about it. She's saying, "Oh, I'm strong. You know, I don't cry in front of anybody and this and that." She goes, she starts bawling, and then all it takes is that one word, and boom, she's, you know, all good again. Which, you know, for the moment is great, right? It gets her through it. So that's where you can have empathy and compassion for someone. It's like these experiences can help someone get through the rough times. But the end game linked to all this is something else entirely. And that's what really irks me. Anyways, poor Peggy.
Because God said that. So
That's so beautiful. You know, I think he always gives us the experiences that we need. And how you were talking about God, like he does the perfect thing. One of the hardest concepts for us to understand is that God is outside of time, where we're stuck in this timeline that God created for us to experience life. And so for us, it's like a river or a road or a timeline. You know, here's World War II, here's Korea, blah, blah, blah. And it goes along this way. It's linear. But for God, everything's this way. The axis is turned 90 degrees, so everything's now. So like right now, God is, Christ is being born. We're having this conversation. You're being born. You're getting married. You're dancing. All of that stuff is happening right now for you. Like everything is the now for God. And he's not trapped in this time like we are. And that's why he knows Alpha to Omega, the beginning to the end, because it's all one whole. And our little finite minds cannot even wrap themselves around that. You know, how in the heck is all this going on at once? No, it's got to be linear. You know, that's all we understand. That's all we've ever experienced. But it really is beautiful how God knows the outcome. He not only knows Peggy when she's 5 years old, but he knows Peggy when she's 85. Even though she's, what, 60, you said now? 62? Anyway, he knows you 82 too. He knows everything you're ever going to do. And he loves everything about you.
Yeah, the life script. I wouldn't say everything because you do still have free will while you're here. But the life script that's picked out before you come here is pretty damn solid. And there's definitely like also sub life script routes that you can take that may veer off of whatever your main path was. But there's still kind of the dead end is kind of the same. It's involving a soul group. It's involving quote unquote things you need to work on or grow on or pay karmic debts for, perceived karmic debts for, on and on and on, right? So let's just talk about fairness, right? So we are in the dumpster fire. We have limited perception. Then when we leave here, there is this apparent being that has literally every single second of every single minute of every single day, month, year, for your entire lifetime from cradle to grave, has all the accounting of that, and then it's used against you. And some will say, oh, well, no, it's not used against you. There's no judgment and this and that and blah, 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 blah. Well, it's clear after listening to NDEs that that's just not the case. It may feel like you're judging yourself, but what is facilitating that experience? That's the matrix. The matrix is facilitating the experience of the life review. And instead of, how awesome would it be if, I know we'll never ever get this, but I think about this a lot. How awesome would it be if we had a life review where someone said, oh, you want to give me a life review? What about you? You allow all this crap to go down on Earth. How are you getting away with it? See, simple things like that, just very, very simple things to look at. And then, the response from, a number of people would be like, oh, well, God works in mysterious ways. You kidding me? You kidding me? Just apply common sense. That's it. Just apply common sense and say, hey, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. I've seen a lot. I've lived a lot. I'm aware of extreme pain and suffering all over the world. And however it may apply to your life. And then ask yourself, how is that fair and just and sane when comparison to what's being advertised in the astral realm, which is, oh, everything's love and light and God loves you and cares about you and, there's no judgment and this and that and blah, blah, blah. Come on. Let's get real. It's just common sense. We're being had. That's it. I don't know. I know I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but
And he loves everything about you in every version.
Yeah. As long as you keep coming back, he loves you.
This journey is for us. This journey is a journey for our self-discovery and to find out what we're not and what we are, And so the timeline's for us. It's not for God, not for us to prove to God that we are worthy. I think that's one of the biggest lies that we've ever been told, is that we have to prove to God that we're worthy. Like that, I grew up Mormon, LDS, right? And I had never felt less worthy, when I experienced that, when I knew that, like that I was not perfect and that I had to prove my love to God and that I had to do these things. And until I experienced, what I did with these two things. And the funny thing is I would tell religious people, like spiritual leaders and stuff in my church, about it. And I remember one time, this church leader, I told him about what happened to me with Christ, my vision. And he looked at me and he says, Ryan, Christ cannot forgive you until the church does.
Aren't they superior?
Right. They just.
You think they're running a discount at the church? Buy 5 sins, get 5 free. As long as you donate 5,000, I don't know, 1,000 a sin, but it's discounted. 500 a sin.
Kind of caught me off guard, but it's so funny because they get caught in this worthiness trap, right? I had to prove my worthiness to the church, and then the church would give me the stamp of approval, which would prove to God that I'm worthy. And they get it all backwards. God already says we're worthy. God already says we're perfect. God already says we are love. And then
perfect. What about the serial killer out there? Oh yeah, that guy's perfect. What about those who, sent all the soldiers to Iraq and Afghanistan? The whole organization behind that mess. Come on. Let's just... Come Come on.
Says we are love. And it's up to us to find that out. Now, if we don't ever find that out and we stay trapped in our cycle of abuse and mistake, we don't grow. There is no growth. So we have to get through that. And so whether you call that sin, or you call it mistakes, or you call it life, call it unworthiness, when you swing to that other side, that pendulum swing, and you're in that joy, and you're in that love, and you're in that worthiness, that's where pure joy resides. That's where our souls rejoice. That's where we dance for hours. That's where we know we're worthy. But we have to have these experiences, whether it's a church or an ex-wife or an ex-husband telling us we're not worthy, so that we can experience that and then go, no, guess what? I am worthy.
Yeah, I'm grateful for, I mean, I can look back, I'm finally at the point, I can look back everything and say, I'm grateful for that, because it made me where I am and who I am now, that I could have never been, never achieved or understood, been this compassionate, I feel, and understanding, if I hadn't went through everything that I went through. And all the rejection just made me try to be good, more rejection, try to be good enough. It didn't matter if you made straight A's in college, if you graduated college, if you had this great career, you were never good enough. You were trash. They let you know all the time that you were trash. You weren't as good as anybody else. And so what did I do? I kept trying to be good. And then I'd stop and I look back and I see how they were never at my level. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
They were cheating on their spouses. They were becoming alcoholics. They weren't going to college. They weren't getting the good careers. They were staying down there in their muck thinking they're superior.
Right. You know, and what's really funny is, like, I actually think social media has enhanced that, because if you think about it, everybody on social media to a big extent is like, look how amazing my life is, look how worthy I am, look how and so when you're scrolling through that, you're like, wow, I'm not very worthy. Like, I haven't been to Bali, I don't get to go on vacation, I don't get to do this, you know. And so it's all these things that just compound it, and we need little reminders that we are worthy. We need little reminders. One of my favorite sayings is that the sword is not fond of the forge that made it, but it is grateful for the strength that it achieved from going through the forge.
I disagree. That statement's BS, because the sword provides loosh. In many ways, the sword provides loosh for the person making it, you know, quite a strenuous task. And then the sword kills and tortures and causes all sorts of problems and feeds the loosh machine. I think the sword is very much appreciated by the Matrix.
And so that's just like what you were describing. We're not fond of the process that we went through, but we are grateful for it, because it did make us into the strong piece of steel that we are now. You know, and that's really what's so beautiful, is the process.
Yeah, and the people that got to show the pictures of their steak dinner, what they're eating, and their pictures on, you know, they went to a Carnival cruise or whatever. I was like, that's all their Facebook is like, look at me, look at this, and they're like, what's their life in between?
Right. And that's the thing. We all are unworthy. We all struggle. We all put up a facade. We all try to make it look like we're this wonderful, amazing person. And guess what? We're all human, and we all need God's love. Every one of us. I mean, from, you know, the people that despise me, the people that criticize me, the people that hate me, they need God's love too. Mm-hmm. And the only reason they do what they do is hurt people that are hurt inside, hurt people.
Yeah. When I started doing this, people started trying to put me on a pedestal. I'm like, oh, don't do that. You'll be disappointed.
Right. Well, and that's the funny thing is like, you're never a hero in your own country, right? People that know me close, like I have a couple of my kids that I'm not sure even believe in God. You know, they've gone through parts and they told me they're atheist, even though I've had my experience. So you're never a hero to the people that know you close because you are human and you will make mistakes. But people see you outside. Like I've run into people that are like, they think, yeah, same thing, that I walk on water. And I'm like, oh no, not even remotely, you know. I could walk on water when it's frozen, you know, but that's about it.
Yeah, just because I'm Christian doesn't mean that I'm perfect. I mean, I say I'm a Christian,
No.
and they assume that means, oh, you go to church every Sunday, you never cuss, you know. No, I don't go to church, and I cuss daily, and I don't mean
Right.
to. I'd like to quit, but it just
Yeah, me too. But then again, I'm a fireman. I can't. So, you know, I do.
I'm gonna put a link
Yeah.
to Lee's video with you because you went through a lot of stuff before you got your NDE. I'd like for people to hear.
Other people. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and a lot of that's in the book too. If anybody wants to pick that up on Amazon,
I'll put a link to your book in there too.
or they can contact me. I'm always happy to sign books.
We leave your email in there in the description.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can leave my email. People are happy to I'm happy to answer any questions that I can for people. But because I really do feel my purpose, like my only purpose in staying, when I made that deal with God, like I was done.
All right, here comes the Matrix marketing department.
My purpose now is to share his love and to tell people of God's love. Like that's the reason I'm here. I'm not here to make a lot of money. I'm not here to, do all the things I do. Hey, don't get me wrong. I do like money and I do like traveling and I do like being spoiled, but that's not my purpose anymore. My purpose is to teach people of God's love. That's when I feel alive, and that's when I know I'm living my purpose.
I was on Dr. Oz a couple years ago talking about my second NDE, and afterwards I was on a podcast, and the girl said during the show, if you're going to be famous, and I had a couple other NDErs tell me this too about that week, said if you're going to be famous, you can lose weight. I'm not losing weight for nobody.
No, you know what? Hey, thanks for sharing your perspective, But there's actually famous people that are overweight too, and they're loved just fine. And it's like people always think, well, if you do it this way, it's going to be better. You know what? We'll do it that way for you. This is the way I'm doing it. And yeah.
I guess I should have told her, if you're going to have a podcast, you shouldn't be so ugly. It's a joke like, I might be fat, but I can lose weight, but you're ugly.
And that's it. And the funny thing is, the people that make comments like that, it always kind of breaks my heart a little bit for them, because they're hurting. They wouldn't have made a comment like that to try to cut you down if they felt good about themselves.
Well, the NDE world was furious that I was on NDE. They were all, even on my wall, saying, why her? Her book isn't bestseller. She isn't this and this speaker. She's not da-da-da-da. Like, who is she? Like, they thought I was this unworthily. Like, they kicked me out of IONS because I'm Christian. And then I went on Dr. Oz, and they're like, what? We thought we ruined her.
Wow, they kicked her out of IONS, huh? I'm kind of shocked at that, because but you know what? IONS has the more love and light narrative, right? And they suppress a lot of information. We've talked about that before. How they oh wow, I'm surprised they kicked her out. That's interesting. I'd love to hear more of that. But yeah, the corruption involved with the experiencer industry.
They're like, what? We thought we ruined her.
And that's so funny. Like, even even us that have had these experiences, and that the ones that we should be like uplifting each other and understanding God's love even more, we also fall back into the petty humanness. We fall back into criticizing each other or comparing. It's so funny because competition and comparison is a very low vibration. It's a very,
The new age.
just low. When you raise your vibration and you're into that higher, there is no competition. We're all cheerleaders for each other. We're all like, yes, that's awesome. You should be on, And
Now, what you find is that you're a cheerleader for others, but it's usually not the reverse, right? You may, especially like, to the general masses, right? It's crazy. One thing I meant to bring up was earlier on the stream, he was talking about how he was, on cloud nine in a state of bliss for a couple weeks. I don't know if any of you've experienced that, but I have. And it was during some intense Zen Buddhism retreats I was at. And it is, words can't describe it. You want to connect with everybody. You want to hear everyone's story. You want to try and help in any way you can. One thing, I think I've shared this maybe once or twice. I was out on one of the Zen retreats in San Diego. This is, I don't know, a number of years ago. And the weird thing was I had gone on one in the East Coast of the U.S., so that kind of shows you the commitment I had, right? And I had a blissed out, crazy Zen experience, I guess, for lack of a better word. And then I went to the one in San Diego, and it was dark as hell, but I still came out of it, even though I wanted to get out of it, and I was happy when it was over, I was still blissed the hell out when I left. Now, the first thing I experienced was because I got a hotel and my flight wasn't for like another day or two. So so I'm outside the hotel and I see a homeless vet. And I start talking to him. I buy him like a little bit of food. And I was just talking to him. I just had this tremendous compassion and empathy for him and was just talking to him. And I said something that pissed him off. It was about, because I think he was in either Afghanistan or Iraq, something like that. And I said something to him, like, I was like, have you had any luck with the education program with linked to doing service? If you do service for a certain amount of years, I think it's like 4 years or 5 years, something like that, you're able to get a free or at least discounted college tuition. I don't know everything about it, but I know it's pretty good. And so I mentioned it to him. He turned on a dime on me. He threatened to kill me. He was pissed. Now, I'm telling you, you want something that could take you out of that state. That was the moment, because I was like, whoa. He says, you say one more effing word, I'm going to knock you out right here. And mind you, the guy's in a wheelchair. And I'm like, I'm not fucking with this guy. Anyways, even though like it did snap me out of like that blissful state, it still went on for, I would say, about a week after that. But the first time, it was probably close to 2 weeks like he experienced. And you have this amazing, words can't describe it. You have like this amazing connection with everything around you. And then it dissipates. And you kind of come back down to earth, so to say. I don't know. Hopefully that made sense, but just sharing it because it was a powerful experience. And at the time, I was considering becoming a Zen Buddhist monk. So part of me wonders, like, hey, are those, were those experiences provided as a way to kind of suck me in and kind of keep me put, even though, like, in the back of my head, for as much value as I was gaining out of that time in my life, I still knew something was missing. I knew something wasn't right. And thankfully I didn't get stuck there. But anyways, it's interesting to think about. So hopefully that made sense.
And yet we're all human. And it's so easy to slip back into that. As long as we have this body, as long as we're taking breaths, I think we're going to struggle with our humanity, and we're going to struggle with being petty. We're going to struggle with judging other people. And realistically, that's our goal, is to get rid of all that. Our goal is to be like God, get rid of the judgment, have nothing but unconditional love for everyone, nothing but this pure spirit about us. But, when I start feeling a little floaty, I usually just say a few swear words so I kind of ground myself again, or I'll make a mistake.
This morning,
yell at another driver.
I was walking through the house, I had my phone listening to you on Lee, and you were telling about the electrocution. And I don't remember what point in there I went, I said the F word through the house, like, because what happened to you?
Right. Yeah, I kind of said the same thing when it happened to me too. Like, and I just remember being so upset about how I was going to die, which is totally ego too when you think about it. Like, I wasn't upset that I was dying. I was upset in how people would perceive me from my death.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to be a hero in my death, saving that little boy when I was when we were in the flashover. Not dying from stupidity, like making myself look dumb, and it's like that again is just all ego. It's all this low vibration, if I can look at it going, wow, whatever way, it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful experience,
And it's
that's
funny,
a higher vibration.
When we think back our NDEs and what we thought at the time, and I was almost in a head-on collision a couple years ago, and I wasn't, but I was like saved from that. But I was like, really? I'm dying right now, this beautiful Saturday afternoon? Like, I'm not even 10 miles from the house. I'm just going to the store. It's almost up there in Pastor Rice, and I can almost see it. I'm going to die right now like this? Like, when I was 25, then when I was waiting to go, once they seen I had to go to surgery, and I'm waiting to go back because I was an organ donor, I had to sign those papers, and I wait for her to come get me, take to surgery. And they had called my whole family. I didn't know at the time, said, wasn't going to make it. But so I'm thinking, I'm not going to live through surgery. I'm thinking I'm dead. Like, I'm not going to live through surgery. And I'm really mad because, like, the doctor would have seen it the night before when I called this 3 times during the week. And so I'm thinking all these things. I remember thinking, I told about it, I think maybe on Lee's show or somewhere before, that I remembered, I'll be honest, I remember 25 and I'm like 105 pounds. And I remember thinking, why am I dying right now? I'm young and I'm pretty. Why not some fat, ugly old person? Like, why me? And I look back like how awful I was to think that. Like, that's me. But that's what I thought. But that's not the thoughts I had in heaven. It's all about my boys. I got to get back and I got to raise my kids. It was nothing about me whatsoever.
It was all about my boys. I had to get back. So, kind of like what Ryan said earlier, where he put his hand across. What about this? Quote unquote, God says, oh, and it shows his boys, right? Same thing. It's always the attachments that lead one back here. And understandably so. It's not like can't relate to that, but it's just one piece of a gigantic puzzle of deception.
And then a few hours later, I'm thinking thoughts like that. It's like you can see the difference how we feel in our soul versus in our mind completely.
Right. And it's so funny when you're in your soul and you're connected to God, when you hear somebody say something like that, you don't even judge them. You're like, oh my God, you're so cute. Like, and I know that's what the angels do to me all the time. They're like, oh, you are so cute. That is just adorable, because we are like little kids, and the comments we make, and the low vibration stuff we do, it is cute. And you just got to remember that, it's like you were talking, one of the, I don't know if I talked about this on Lee's podcast that I did, but I got into a head-on collision. So I was coming back from Las Vegas. I'd been down there speaking at a near-death experience conference, and I was coming back, had all my books in the back. And the funny thing was, I was trying to get everybody to go down with me. This was my very first big speaking forum where I had a bunch of people in the audience. I'd done little ones up to this point, and I was so proud of it. I was like, oh, this is going to be really cool. They're paying for me, my hotel and all this. And so I go down there, nobody, and my wife, like at the time, well, we were just dating. She was just my girlfriend then. And her heart got heavy, and she's like, I'm not supposed to go. And I'm like, oh, okay. And she's very spiritually in tune. And so she decided not to go. So I invited my daughter and my granddaughter. And then they backed out at the last minute. And then I invited my best friend and his wife, and they backed out at the last minute. And I invited my mom, and she backed out. Well, so I go down all alone, kind of feeling kind of sorry for myself. Nobody wants to be with me on my big debut, blah, blah, blah. Go down there, speak. I'm coming back from it. And I just got outside of St. George, Utah, heading north on I-15, and almost to Cedar City, when I had gotten some ideas about a second book and about the nature of God. So I was getting this download, so I decided to record it on my phone. So I'm recording it on my phone and talking about it, and I got done, and I remember how much opposition I got when I was writing my book about my near-death experience. Like, so much opposition, like just about killed me. Like the terrible, terrible, horrific things that happened to me while I was writing that book. So I said a little prayer, and I said, Heavenly Father, if I get as much opposition writing a second book as I did in my first one, I will really need your protection. And I just barely finished praying for protection. And I looked at the road, and I'm in the fast lane doing 85 just cruising along, not very much traffic on the road, just flying up the highway. And I looked down, I started an audio book on my phone, and then I looked back up, and I saw a red pickup truck falling out of the sky, upside down, like the movie Twister. Remember that?
Yeah, I did.
Movie? So I see this truck going wham and hits the ground and comes toward me like this. And I'm like, my brain couldn't even process what was happening. And so I tried to slam on my brakes, but it was instantly hit me. And the truck just comes apart. So I'm in this SUV. It was a Chrysler Aspen. And something encased me in a force field. And pieces of metal come flying at my face and then go up and around me. And like, I end up on the side of the road, and I'm trapped in this metal cocoon where everything around me smashed up into me, but I was completely untouched. I remember the airbag going off and flattening out in front of me like it couldn't hit me. And I thought, that is so weird. Why, like being a firefighter, I go on people all the time that have airbag burns or shoulder harness, broke their clavicle. And I was just like completely held still where none of that touched me. And I get done, and I'm looking around, and there's metal here. I could barely turn my head, and I'm encased in this, and even the dash bent around my knee. So I've got my knee in the dash, and the dash has, like, the metal went around my leg, and I'm trapped in there. Well, this guy comes up, and he's trying to open the door and pry me out and get me out of there. And I ended up getting out, and I looked at it, and right in front of me, everything was smashed flat. To the right of me, where my wife would have been, was smashed all the way to the seat. Like if she would have been there, she would have been squished, decapitated, dead. Anybody, the back seat directly behind me was smashed all the way down to those seats. Like the whole truck was completely, except for this little cocoon where I was. And I walked away from there without a scratch on me, like completely intact. My knee wasn't damaged by the metal bending around it. Like, you know, why wouldn't the knee break versus the metal? And nothing. Like I walked away, and I remember the police officer coming up to me and going, "Wow, did anybody check on that white truck? Is that guy dead?" And I'm like, "No, that's me. I'm fine." And he's like, "You were in it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "And you're walking?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he just shook his head and walked off, you know. But I've got all these pictures in my book of that, of the accident. And it's just, it was such a miracle. You know, I mean, some of these NDEs, like that one alone, like there's no way I should have walked away from that, let alone without a scratch. Like I should have been dead. Like, you know, one of the things that happens in your body is when you go from 85 miles an hour to a sudden stop, you have what's called a coup contra coup injury in your brain, where your brain splashes forward, hits the front part of your skull, bounces like a rubber ball back and forth, and causes brain damage. Your heart is disconnected by some large blood vessels, the aortic arch and your vena cava and all this. Just your heart's not held together by anything but these blood vessels. So a lot of times when you have a sudden stop like that, your heart slams into your rib cage up front. You'll get an aortic aneurysm or aortic tear, and you bleed to death internally. And it will kill you that way. So these are very common injuries in a very sudden stop. I have none of that. I have no injury. Like none of it makes any sense. It's a miracle just as much as like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace, or Daniel in the lion's den, you know, like those were unexplainable. So was this, you know, there's like no way to explain away. And even like the heaviness my wife got, nobody would go with me. If anybody would have came with me, they'd been dead. Anybody in that truck other than me, you know, would have been dead. And it just kind of goes back to, you know, God has a purpose for you. And until it is your time, it's not your time. And especially if you are living on purpose and you're trying to serve God, you know, your life will be extended and you have things to do. We came down here to learn things and to experience things.
Yeah, the whole thing, I completely feel that when we come here, we have a birthday, we have a death day, and those are set in stone. I don't think they vary at all. Now, maybe there are some weird exceptions out there, but I think those are the two guarantees in life. You know, like there's with your life script that's agreed upon in pre-birth, that your birthday and death date are pretty much locked in. So, you know, obviously, there are exceptions for free will.
And some people, they learn and experience what they came to learn quicker than others. Maybe I'm a slow learner. I don't know. I keep getting. So I kind of, after that one, I kind of figured out that I was not going to create any more near-death experiences. And I haven't since, knock on wood, you know. But yeah, it's just one other little crazy thing about my life I thought I'd share.
Very interesting. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we're done?
I think we've taken up everybody's time enough. You know, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But thanks for listening, you guys.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it very much.
Okay, so that's going to wrap up the experiencer portion of today. Thank you for hanging in there. There's a few questions. So that was Ryan Rampton. And just so you know, the pictures are in his book. So this guy has been through a lot. You know, uh, I I feel a good chunk of his story, if not all of it, is true. Because there's a lot to back it up to. You can check out his book if you're interested. And I think the guy has been through hell and somehow made it out the other side, but at a costly price. And that cost is he's a customer for life in this incarnation. So, okay, so there's a few questions that were submitted earlier. One question I saw that I just copied and pasted here was from MTN7224. They asked, why would the Matrix allow us to use psychedelics? I think that's a great question. And my kind of view on that is psychedelics a lot of times keep someone completely distracted within the Matrix, even though you can wake up and have amazing experiences with them. At the end of the day, there is, you know, if you have breakthrough trips or something, you're really kind of you're traversing through the Matrix, and you're impaired too. There's a big difference between having a breakthrough experience going outside the body on psychedelics versus going outside the body, you know, let's just say organically without substances, right? That's, again, I'm not knocking them because it's a good way to realize your powers, you know, as a creator being. But at the same time, it's more chaotic. Whereas with something with an out-of-body experience, a lucid out-of-body experience, you're, Christ, man, you can experience so much more and realize just how powerful you are. But the same applies for psychedelics, so I'm certainly not knocking them. It's just a different approach. So, you know, a lot of psychedelics through the eons have been used for, you know, religious ceremonies, spiritual ceremonies that, you know, are directly linked to the Matrix. So, in my opinion, they even though, yeah, they can wake you up and stuff like that, but in the end, they're most likely still going to keep you contained here. Some even go out and have breakthrough trips and think, you know, God is like the machine elves, or God is a computer program, or this, that. But like going the next step to looking at this place as a soul trap is something else entirely. So, it could also be part of controlled truth too, where, okay, these things are available to you, just like everything else, like how they give us tremendous amounts of truth, up, down, left, and right. Everywhere you look, there's truth bombs being revealed in a sea of BS. But the information nonetheless is there. So I think it's kind of, at least how I look at it is, it's like, hey, these things are available. They're out there. You have to seek them and find them. What are you going to do? You know, like, and that's not just psychedelics. That's just anything in life. Like any truth out there, you know, seek and you shall find. But it's the over, like the constant theme throughout all of this is distraction. Just think about all the truths that are out there, loads of them. And they're like just so many endless distractions. Now, the good thing is those endless distractions can eventually get you to here, where you realize the soul trap and like how deceptive this whole system is. And, you know, you basically have to get through that in some way, shape, or form, no matter how big or small. But in the end, if you get to the realization of the soul trap and empower yourself, I mean, that's what matters. I mean, that's what I did. That's how I got here. I went through all the typical matrix BS and, you know, analyzing politics and the deception with that and religions and seeing the deception with that, but realizing the truth bombs along the way. And what did it do? It kind of funneled everything into this realization that, hey, this is this is one big fat deception. You know? So it's an interesting path that we can all get to, and we all kind of go our own ways to get here. So again, if you're new or otherwise on the fence, please do your own research and prove this to yourself. I don't expect anyone to believe me, but if you give yourself a couple years, I promise, I think you'll come out the other end seeing this for what it is. So, all right, Jane asks, if the elites know about this realm, why do they stay? I don't think they do. See, that's the thing. I don't think they do. I think the ones that are, look, okay, so I think we have a few different so-called like classes of parasites that we're dealing with. I think you have the for consumption parasites, which is, the ones you see in the news, the Gates, the Bushes, the Clinton, all that stuff, right? You have the ones that are up front and in your face. But the ones who are truly pulling the puppet strings will never, ever, ever know their name. So the ones that are out there are the rage candidates, right? That are for public consumption. They're specifically there to piss you off and to get you worked up and to blame them. Meanwhile, the class behind them that's pulling the strings will never know their name, never know their faces, ever, 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 ever. We will never know it. So the constant distractions are out there. There's always someone to blame for why things don't improve, why things don't ever get better. Why problems don't get resolved, simple, basic problems don't get fixed, because we all know that the system, the way it's designed, is for the parasitic class, right? But that's the for consumption one. And then, of course, like I was saying, the ones behind it will never know. Now, here's kind of what I think's happening. I think with the on the case across the board, I'm talking about those for consumption in our face and those who we cannot put a face to. I think a good chunk of those, like a high percentage, I would say probably close to 99%, 99.9%, do not have any clue what the hell is going on here. They may know something's wrong. They may know something's weird. But remember, a lot of these individuals are born into certain bloodlines and are from a young age tortured, right? They're brought into these brainwashing programs and made to do things, or at least programmed to do things that, any parent in their right mind would not program a child to be like when they get older. Like mass murder or war crimes, all these different things, right? But then and they worship this system on top of it too. They have all these occult rituals, these different religions and sects and all that stuff that kind of all funnel into the same feeding of the matrix. But then you kind of have probably at the tip top. Again, we will never know these individuals' faces, names, nothing about them. But there is, in my opinion, there has to be a small group. It could be really tiny. Heck, it could even be, just like one family. I don't know, but my gut tells me it's a very small group, and they have direct interaction with the AI or computer mainframe, let's say, of this system, right? They take orders and do as they're told, and then they pass those things down to the parasites below them, the ones with a face, the ones without a face. And so they kind of have that level of disconnect between them. Now, do they know what they're dealing with? Exactly, that they're involved with the soul trap? I don't know. But again, we're talking about a very, very select, small group of individuals or families or family. And even if they do, who's to say that they're even actual spirited beings? And if they are spirited beings, which this kind of trickles down to the rest of the parasite class, again, the four-face consumption parasites and the ones behind the scenes that we'll never know. I think that they are so far gone and so lost that figuring out that this place is some sort of trap isn't even on their mind, isn't even on their radar. Does that mean they can't figure it out? No, of course. I think any spirited being, not an NPC, not something that has absolutely no essence, but something that has at least a smidgen of essence in them, can figure it out. That door is always open in some way, but I think because they are so degraded and so far gone that they're incapable of getting to the point of realizing just how deep the deception goes that they're involved with. But again, I think there's just probably like a few families that truly know what the hell's going on and interact with the AI system, and nobody else knows about it. Or, you know, they're able to pull the levers in the realm in some way, shape, or form, and they have access to taking orders from it, and that could be a computer, it could be, you know, entities running a computer, or direct entity contact without computers. I don't know. All right, without an AI system, it could just be direct entity to entity to parasitic top tier family connections, right, that are being made. But that's really what my gut tells me. I think very, 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 very few know what the hell is going on here. Hence why this topic, I don't think, gets, you know, taken down. I'm going to be honest. I mean, well, the Rothschilds, Prepper, again, they're just, they're for consumption, right? It's all for consumption. Humanity needs someone to place blame on. Now, that's not to say that they're not doing as they're told and we shouldn't be pissed off. It's just that they are the face of it, when in fact, the face behind them, no one will ever know. Like, and I mean, think about it. If you're involved with running this place, you're going to have levels of disconnection between you and your minions below you, right? That you cast down orders to. You're not going to put yourself front and center and say, hey, I'm Rothschild, I run all the money and this and that, blah, blah, blah. No, you're not going to do that. You're going to have several layers of disconnection away from you and pass down those orders and make sure that they're carried out to a T. And if they're not carried out to a T, you're probably going to take them out or demote them or send them off to do some other thing, some other job in the Matrix. Like maybe like work at Hollywood or a TV station or you know, Google or, you know, something like that, where you're going to make sure that they're in a position of prominence, but also still feeding and taking care of business that the Matrix wants. So anyways, yeah, my gut is that the ones, I know I keep repeating myself, but there's just no way that at least those who are in the physical here and that truly are involved with running this place, not the pawns. There's just no way that you're ever gonna see their face. There's just no way. This system is not. It's not that stupid. They're never ever gonna do that. So, they're always, Christ. You got to remember. You got to think about looking at this realm as if you were some chief parasite running it. I know it's difficult. It's difficult to think that screwed up, but you really have to. You have to think diabolically. Like, okay, so what if this happened? How would a parasitic control structure act? What would be the sneakiest way to achieve ABC or XYZ? Yeah. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. Kind of went off a little bit there, but just one moment, guys. Gotta grab a drink of water. Losing my voice. All right. So, next question from Armchair Prophet says, have you thought about getting an in-person convention together for this community meet to discuss actionable steps we might take in further alerting the public and winning the psychological war? Oof. There were some things in the beginning I thought about. There were some things I think marketing is really the key to everything, right, in life, to spreading the word. Creating maybe flyers, like a flyer with a page or two that kind of give a brief breakdown. And maybe you're not going to know who you run into, but let's just say we pass out flyers randomly in public, and maybe 1 in 10 or 2 in 10 already are over the hump and realize that reincarnation's happening, or maybe they realize near-death experiences are a real thing, right? And you may be able to help and direct them to, this is like my channel or Wayne's website and channel, or Dan's channel, things like that. And even some things like I thought about would be interesting way to kind of spread the word would be like at music festivals, or even spiritual gatherings of that nature. I really think there are ways to spread this. The other thing I mentioned early on, and some of you may laugh, but I swear I think this is a way. Again, this matrix never ceases to amaze me in that it always reveals truth. Always. And the bigger the lie, the bigger the truth has an effect in coming out. That's something that really just seems, it seems like it has to happen. It almost like it's a safeguard, almost like it's, okay, oof. Well, we can go off a little bit on that one, right? So I think it's one of two things. Why do we get the truth so much? Why? My theory on this is one of two things. And I can't, and I would love to hear your feedback in the chat or in the comment section afterwards if you're watching the replay. I'd love to hear your feedback. So, number one, so first, why do we get so much truth? Why? I mean, yes, it's always littered with lies. We all know that. But why do we get so many big truths all the time? Okay, so option A, this is kind of where I'm at. One is that maybe there is some retribution from an outside force. I'm not going to call it God. I'm not going to call it a creator. I'm just saying maybe there is a form of checks and balances with some sort of outside force that this system, these parasites know is present. And so by divulging the truth, even though, peppered with lies and deceit, the truth is still there. And it's just up to us to fine tune our discernment to throw away the garbage and dissect the truth that is contained within those releases. Okay. Option 2 is, go with this. I'm sorry, guys. Hate having Lyme disease. Fucks with my memory. One moment. Let me collect my thoughts for a minute. Okay. All right. So the second one is how. Okay. Well, we could maybe say 3. All right. Let's just say. Okay. So number 2 would be that we, deep within us, know something's wrong, right? There's something within our essence that we connect with and realize is wrong, and maybe others realize the same, and it just comes out. Now, I'm not necessarily on board with that one. Now, the third one is something that, may piss off a few of you, but and it's very hard for me to wrap my head around this, but it is possible. Not just possible, it's probable that this could also just be one big fucked up game, right? And that the information comes out because it's released, right, in a way to wake us up. Now, I really don't subscribe to that. I leave it on the table. I'm not going to discount it because it's very possible. But in my gut, I don't think that's the case, because I really truly feel that this place feeds off our energy, feeds off our creative abilities, and it wants to do everything in its power to keep us coming back here. And that's where my gut goes, like 100, almost near 100%. But I have to leave the door open that this could be something that we came into, and that it's just one big messed up game, just like Wayne and I talked about, and Dan and I talked about how, if you're this eternal being and you're eternal, like you're not going to die. You have eternal existence, and you come across this realm, or you hear about this realm, and kind of it's advertised as like, oh, well, you can go and experience what it's like to not exist, or be faced with non-existence, which, obviously is birth and death here on Earth as a human. That could be something appealing. And I look at myself. I'm very curious. I want to research things. I want to look at things. I want answers to things. I want to try to think outside the box and experience what I can, when I can, if the opportunity presents itself. So if you're an eternal being, and I'm trying to look at myself in this and say, I could see myself being attracted to initially wanting to come here and experience this. I could see that. Because if you don't have a compass or a gauge to know what a human body is, what suffering and pain and suffering and love and happiness and joy and hate. And if you don't have anything to compare it to, then it's easy to say, oh, I'll go experience it, even though I bet we get the fine print. I really feel that we get the fine print before we come here. Now, could there be some deception involved with that? Maybe, but I don't think so. I really don't. I think we know exactly what's going on once we get here, right before we get here. And then once you're here, your memory wiped. So it's like it doesn't matter anyways. It's just you're not going to remember until you do remember. So anyways, yeah, so I don't know, where do you guys stand with all this? I'd love to see what you guys think in the chat.